Hey everyone, what's up? It's Babylonius from PeakofSerenity.com here with another 5-minute Windwalker guide for you. This time we're going to be covering the Tomb of Sargeras Trinkets. So let's put 5 minutes on the clock and see if I can't cover all of our trinkets in 5 minutes. Here we go. Alright, so the first trinket, going just based on the dungeon journal, is the Cradle of Anguish. Cradle of Anguish has a static haste on it. And how it works is as long as you're above 80%, you will gain a stacking agility buff. It'll stack up to 10 times. And it will keep that buff as long as you remain above 50%. So this provides a pretty reasonable chunk of agility. The fact that it brings haste is kind of a bummer, but it does bring a pretty reasonable chunk of agility if you are able to stay above that 50%. So if you're going to use this trinket, it's a decent trinket. Not spectacular, but decent. If you're going to use this trinket, you definitely want to pay extra attention to when you're using your defensive cooldowns so that you can stay above that 50% as much as possible. Alright, next is Engine of Eradication. This is one of the better trinkets from Tomb of Sargeras, and it has a static mastery, which is always good. And what it does is your auto attacks have a chance to increase your agility by a big chunk for 12 seconds. And at the same time, it will spawn orbs around you. 4 orbs, I believe, around you, that if you pick up an orb, it increases the duration by 3 seconds. So you can have a maximum duration on this buff at 24 seconds. And that's what makes this trinket very strong. If it procs, you can have it up for a long time. Obviously, you're not going to want to take extra raid damage or risk dying in order to get the orbs. But if you're able to get it, if the buff procs, this trinket is very RNG based. You can go a long time without a proc, so you can see some procs back to back. While testing on PTR, I had enough procs back to back that I had about 2 minutes of uptime on this huge agility buff. About 2 minutes out of 3 minutes I had the buff up. So it can be an absolutely silly trinket if you get it. So it's one of the stronger ones, but again, you can also go 2 or 3 minutes without any procs, at which point really sucks. Next is Infernal Cinders. Infernal Cinders is static crit, and what it does is your melee attacks, roughly 10 of them per minute, will deal an additional amount of fire damage, and the critical strike for this fire damage is increased by 10% for every additional ally within 10 yards who has this item. So the strength of this trinket is heavily based on how many other people in your raid are using it. My raid, for example, we have like 8 or 9 people who all have it, so we tend to use it a lot because there's always 4 or 5 people in the raid that use it, making it kind of best for pretty much everybody. But really it depends a lot on what other trinkets you have available to you, as well as the other people in your raid who are using this trinket. So you might need to kind of get together and decide whether you're all going to run it or no one's going to run it, depending on what people need. But it's a good solid trinket that gets stronger or weaker depending on how many other people have it. And next we have Spectre of Betrayal. This has static agility, and what it does is when you use it, you can use it every 45 seconds. When you use it, it spawns a spirit at your location, and that spirit pulses a couple times over 3 seconds, dealing magic damage to targets in the air, split evenly. So it's really mainly a single target trinket. And then what it does is after 45 seconds, you can use it again. And because the ghost remains up for 1 minute, you can actually have 2 ghosts at the same time, which means that you can, when you proc it again or use it again, then both the spirits will pulse. So the goal with this trinket is to have 2 spirits up pretty much at all times and use it, within that. Because it takes 3 seconds to deal damage, you need to use it at least every 57 seconds in order to get the most out of this trinket. And if you do, this trinket is without a doubt the strongest single target trinket we have available to us. It does an incredible amount of damage. But the spirits are static. They do not move. So if the target is moving around and not going to get hit, the more movement in a fight, the less useful this trinket is going to be. So if the boss stays in its spot and you can get the double spirits on all of them, it is without a doubt the strongest trinket we have. But if not, it loses its power relatively rapidly. Next we have Umbral Moonglaves. This is my personal favorite. It's got static versatility, and what it does is it spawns a storm of glaives at your feet, which pulses every second and then after 8 seconds it explodes, dealing AoE damage. This AoE damage is not split, it's hit to all targets, so this really is just about the best AoE trinket we have available to us in this tier. So it's very strong for AoE, not too strong in single target, but very strong in AoE, especially if you can line it up with Serenity and other cooldowns. Next, Really kind of last, we have Vial of Ceaseless Toxins. This is another incredibly strong trinket. It's got a static agility, and what it does is when you use it, it inflicts a dot on the target. It deals damage up front as well as a big chunk of damage over 20 seconds. If they die while that effect is active, the cooldown is reduced by 45 seconds. So you could even theoretically use this every 15 seconds if you have enough targets that are going to die. So it's a very strong single target trinket and can be abused very easily to get a ton more damage. Those are all the ones that are specifically on our loot table. I know we're over time, but I do want a special shout out to the Tomb of Unraveling Sanity. This is typically a ranged trinket, although when you use it, it will deal shadow damage. It gives you agility, so really it works just fine for melee users, but it is on the ranged loot table. And what it does is it deals shadow damage over 12 seconds. When the effect ends, you get a crit buff. If the effect ends early because the target dies, you get a crit buff for the longer duration. So if the target dies after 1 second, you'll have 23 seconds of crit buff. If it dies after 12 seconds or doesn't die at all, then you'll have 12 seconds of crit. So this is another very strong trinket. It's got a lot of agility. It drops from Kill Jaden just like Spectre, so it comes... it works, it starts with a higher item level, so really another very strong trinket, but again, depends on what else you have. So that covers all of the tomb trinkets that Windwalker really need to care about. So thank you very much for listening. I hope this answers more questions than it creates. Please support me and us through Patreon and PayPal. For more information about this, please check out PeakofSerenity.com for a lot more information about Windwalkers and all that stuff, and help support us to keep making content like this. Check out my other 5-minute videos, and I will be doing more about trinkets. So thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I will see